Hello there. It's me, the guy that you hate to see his posts on Facebook, right? Most of you. I wanted to make a very, very short little video just to say hey and just to put a face behind the posts. Um, each and every one of you, obviously, we know each other personally. We've known each other for a long time. Um, and I think that I probably should have done this earlier, but a lot of you think I've gone crazy, um, and I may have, but I don't. I personally don't think so. And I just wanted to take a moment to kind of say hi and talk about a couple things and just sort of set the record straight because what I find, and this is obvious, but on Facebook and other places, you're having multiple conversations in various different places on various threads and various comments, and you kind of forget who you've responded to. You may have sort of laid out a position or explained something in one comment or thread and not necessarily in another one, so you have a lot of different friends and family who may not, who may see a snippet of something without the context. So I wanted to give a little bit of context. Again, I'm going to keep this super short. But I first of all, I just wanted to remind everybody that I'm I'm Eric. I'm the same guy that that you worked with, that you are friends with, or you knew back in school. I don't want to kill your grandma. I don't want to kill my grandma. Well, my grandma died last year. Not of this. But I don't want to kill my mom. And all that stuff is understandable but not helpful. So I just wanted to kind of give a very quick personal narrative here, which I think will explain how I have been on the side of opening up, no shutdown, advocating for Plan B for weeks now, and also the idea that we need to stop this madness. So super quick, rewind back to December. Over Christmas, I was actually in Virginia with my family, and I was on TikTok, ironically, and I started seeing videos of Chinese people falling over in the streets and dying. And it was, I was like, what? This is weird. And there was no context. You obviously don't believe everything on the internet. So I kind of didn't know what to make of it, but they were starting to come. And based on what everybody, if you've been paying attention for the last, 30 years, that viruses tend to come out of China. That's not being racist. That is just a fact. But anyway, you look at this and, you don't know where these videos are from. You don't know when they're from. And the context started to come out of Asia, the countries that are around China who have dealt with SARS, who had dealt with these other outbreaks. And they started being the ones to ask the questions. And, you move into January and the Western media, the United States media, did not pay attention to this at all. They weren't paying attention. The only thing that they were paying attention to was impeachment. And here I am looking at, now it's even more videos. At that point, we even had the video of the girl eating the bat soup. And that narrative had started to come out that it came from this wet market. Again, I hadn't formed any firm opinions, but it was obvious that there was this sort of indie news thread that was burbling up over in China and Japan, Hong Kong, Taiwan, South Korea. They were starting to be like, holy shit, there's something to see here. And then, lo and behold, we were talking about, whistleblower statutes and, the impeachment and all this stuff. And in January, I was freaking out. I was talking to everybody that I knew. I was asking people if they'd heard of this. Nobody had heard of this. I was called a conspiracy theorist in early January by a lot of people who I like, and you know who you are. And again, I wasn't offended, but again, it's I understood that everybody else's attention was over here, and I was paying attention to that too. was also working and doing life stuff. But I was also paying attention or trying to find out about this virus. And very early on, it was obvious that the Chinese government was suppressing information. They were lying. They were, literally disappearing these doctors, who, by the way, were the original TikTok doctors and TikTok nurses. Releasing these videos on TikTok, which was the only way they could release them because of the censorship over there. And there was really kind of nothing. The only person that brought this up in early January in the Western media was Tucker Carlson. And I know what most of you are going to say, which is like, ooh, Fox News, right? But I'm looking around, I'm looking at these scenes, these horrific scenes coming out of Wuhan. I don't know when they are, I don't know what they are. And lo and behold, I hear that Tucker Carlson has brought it up on his show. So I bring up the clip, I look at it, and I'm like, thank God. Holy crap, somebody's actually talking about this. We don't know what it is, but we need to look at it. Nobody else was looking at it. Fast forward to sort of the third week of January, there was a op-ed in the New York Times, which was called, "Is this a pandemic yet?" I also believe that Scott Gottlieb, the ex, executive branch member, had an opinion piece around that time too. But that was the minority, big time, the minority. Nobody wanted to talk about this. Nobody wanted to focus on this. And boom, out of the blue, seemingly, on January 30, Trump bans flights from China. And I remember vividly when this happened, vividly. And, they've actually started erasing a lot of the news stories from this time. They've been erasing the tweets from this time. And if you go back 15 days to January 14th, the WHO had tweeted that this was absolutely no human-to-human transmission, nothing to worry about. They've since deleted that tweet, but I posted it on my Facebook. And a lot of you saw that. Not a lot of you commented. But the point was that the WHO and the Chinese government were lying to us. And we knew that. All right? So when Trump banned the China flights, the immediate media reaction and political reaction was that this was xenophobic and this was unfair and this was an overreaction. And I remember thinking, like, wow, that's 2 weeks too late. I actually thought it was a very bold move given the political climate. And, we like to pretend that our leaders, whether it's Trump or Cuomo, left, right, middle, whoever, we like to play, 2020 hindsight, Monday morning armchair quarterback. And I'm sorry, but it just doesn't meld with reality, because in January, apparently the CDC acknowledged this thing on January 4th. They declined South Korea's testing, right? Because again, I've read that they declined it for a couple reasons. Most of them were bureaucratic, regulatory, federal government red tape reasons, right? Which are not good reasons. But one of the reasons apparently was that they felt that the South Korean test had a very high false positive negative rate. And the theory is that could work for South Korea based on their society, based on their experience with these kinds of things. Because they, remember, they had to deal with SARS and they had to deal with the bird flu. It always comes out of China, goes straight to them, right? And they've dealt with this crap for years. And they also don't trust China. When China and the WHO said there's nothing to see here, South Korea, Taiwan, most of Hong Kong, Japan, Singapore were all like, well, China, the communist government in China says there's nothing to see here. Therefore, there is absolutely something to see here. Holy shit, let's freak out, right? But again, we were focused on impeachment. Trump banned the flights. Everybody freaked out. People even thought that it was, some sort of mad scientist, trade negotiation tactic from Trump, right? Like, I remember people saying that, and I'm going, it's obviously this virus that you guys aren't paying attention to, right? So then you kind of skip into February, and people started talking about it, right? By that time, Italy had been hit, and I remember vividly, and the clips are still up, the news stories are still up. You had every single politician, all sides, all right? Even though they were still sniping at each other, the thread was the same. The thread was that this is just the flu. And again, people throw that around like it's not just the flu, right? I've never said that, but a lot of our so-called leaders at that point said it was just the flu. In fact, in New York, the clips are there. They were encouraging people to go to the Chinese New Year's parade and all sorts of stuff. Go out, mingle, go to theaters, go to blah, 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 blah. And I understood that because I understand the economy. And I understand that even back then, right, in February, when I still, again, there wasn't a lot of data back then, and it seemed like, after the WHO finally admitted that there was human-to-human contact or transmission, they then very quickly announced that it was a 3 to 5% mortality rate. And, anybody that has even casually watched one of those pandemic movies, right, knows that is like not okay. 3 to 5% mortality rate is, getting up there, like to smallpox. Well, smallpox is much more, but like that's not the flu. That's not, and at that point, that was a worst case scenario. And I'm freaking out. I don't believe it, but that's the only data that we had. And in early February, I was one of the few people that was saying, holy shit, we should be looking at this. This could have a 3 to 5%, mortality rate. This obviously is very transmissible. We don't know, like, what are we doing? And our leaders were saying, just keep going to the theater. And again, I understood it. Didn't agree with it at the time. But fast forward through February, watched Italy, completely, implode. We watched Iran completely implode. And what I found was interesting is that the media, and again, I know it's a trope, but the media sucks. Guys, do we understand this? Do we, like, and this was sort of a huge, this entire episode, again, from late December to now still has been a real eye opener for me. Believe me, I haven't, necessarily blindly trusted the media my entire life, right? I know that there's agendas. I know that there's narratives. I know, again, I'm an adult. I know what goes on, and so do you. But I am just dumbfounded at the trajectory of the media and the narrative and the coverage and the clickbait and the urge to control the population through a narrative that has happened since I started following this in late December, and it continues to this day. It's reprehensible. The urge to censor information that does not align with this. Again, I don't know who decides what the official narrative is, but this idea that if you question the official narrative, right, that you are a bad person, or you're a conspiracy theorist, or you're a MAGA, white supremacist, like, make up whatever you want. It happens, and that's the first time in my life I've ever had that shit directed at me. And, my feelings aren't hurt, but it's one of these things, like, I don't get it. I don't understand. I'm still the same dude that right? I have my flaws. I'm not perfect, but I genuinely try and be a good, fair, thoughtful person. I'm also a skeptical person. I also try and admit when I'm wrong. And I got to tell you guys, I haven't been wrong a lot in this. And I'm not saying I'm an expert. We'll get to the experts in a second. But in February, when everybody was saying this was just the flu, I'm thinking, holy shit, this thing's already here. And I think that we're finding out, again, there's really no way to tell, but it seems like that this thing was in the United States for much longer than we thought. Like, the first case was January 15. I think that we're finding out that it was probably here in December, right? Well, maybe we'll figure this whole history out, or maybe we won't. But February, we saw Iran and Italy just completely get decimated, and it was terrible. And my point about the media about this is that it was very interesting to me that the entirety of the media, and I'm talking like almost lockstep, and that is scary when that happens, guys. And if you think it's not scary, and if you think it's like, comforting when everybody's on the same page, no, when everybody's on the same page, your spidey sense needs to go off. All right. They might be right, but you need to question. You need to be skeptical. You need to politely and thoughtfully question. That's what we're supposed to do. And again, for these months, there weren't anybody questioning. And with Iran and Italy, the media did not question. They did not go in and say, okay, here's what's going on. Obviously, you can't do it with Iran, but Italy, you can. And all the media wanted to do with Italy was hold Italy up at that point, again, late February, as something that we were going to become, right? Because we saw the curve. That's when the Medium article came out. That's when the WAPO article came out. Flatten the curve, flatten the curve, flatten the curve. And well, actually, that was early March. But again, that was that time period. And the problem was that if you looked into Italy and you looked at what made Italy specific, there was hope there. There was information there. Italy, and I'll run through it very quickly. There have been some articles written about it, not as many as there should have been, but Italy, first of all, has over 300,000 Chinese nationals that live in Italy, and they make your boots. They make your Italian bags that say made in Italy. They are made by imported, super low wage, probably sweatshop level Chinese workers. And what had happened is that they had come back from Wuhan to Italy, and they had infected Italy. Nobody brought that up. Is that insensitive to bring up? Because they're Chinese? Because there's like immigrant labor going? Like, I'm sorry. I'm an adult. I'm okay with talking about these things. I'm not judging anybody, but that's a fact. That is how Italy got infected. There's also a huge expat Chinese national population in Iran. That's how Iran got it. And again, Iran and Italy weren't able to handle it because the Chinese government didn't say anything. They didn't say, holy shit, something got out, guys. Be careful. Here's what we know. Didn't do it. And all of a sudden, Italy and Iran, say what you want about Iran. I don't want Iranian people to die in droves from this thing. It's terrible. But we weren't asking those questions. And I noticed that. And this was a big deal. Who do you talk to? Who do you complain to? When you see that Italy, and again, Italy had a lot that's different than us, right? A much older average population, right? They live in multi-family households, multi-generational households, right? So everybody's infecting each other. And that's an important point. And because we didn't pay attention to that multi-generational household thing, when we locked down, and the fact that we were locking kids, adults, and grandparents in the same house out of an abundance of caution, and everybody got sick. Cuomo was like, oh my God, how did 61% of our new cases come from people locked in at home? Look at Italy. That's how they got sick. This thing is obviously very contagious. I still contend that the mortality rate is going to be very low, once we start measuring this thing correctly, but that's where most experts think it's going to end up, right around where the flu is, which is very low. It's 0.1%. This may not get there. And I've never contended that this is not something to be concerned about. I've always contended that this is something not worth blowing up our entire way of life about. If it was 3 to 5% mortality rate, maybe we can have that discussion about locking everybody in for 3 months. But it's not. It never was. And you knew it. But back to Italy. They were also smokers, right? Italy, especially the older generations, big smokers. Now, there's obviously been some competing, news stories about whether or not, nicotine or smoke helps. I've heard that for years, actually. I've had a lot of smoker friends that, swear that the fact that they smoke keeps them from getting sick. I don't know. I'm not going to start smoking, but the other thing was Italy, they hug and kiss hello. They're very touchy. Japan's not. America's kind of in the middle. We don't like lick each other, upon greeting. But, Italy, they kiss each other on the cheeks. They do all this stuff. And that's another thing. So Italy had a lot of things. And also they had the least number of ICU beds. Their medical system sucks. Sorry. It does. It's not good. They try. I'm not demeaning the workers. I'm not saying that they didn't try. They don't care. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that their medical system ain't great. But anyway, when we saw Italy, this is one of the first things I started posting, which is like, hey, we aren't Italy. We don't have to be Italy. And I started bringing these things up. And again, this was me, all of a sudden forced to become like this internet sleuth, trying to find news stories from around the world that that illuminated things like why is this happening to Italy? And again, it wasn't the first fairly mainstream article was in the Telegraph. And I remember, I think it was in early March, but it was like, it outlined some of these things I'm talking about Italy. But it was very careful to not sort of, play it up. And at that point, in early, mid, and later March, the entirety of the media and the political class went from nothing to see here, it's just the flu, to full freaking freak out. And sometimes in life, you got to freak out. Sometimes it's a big deal and you got to, go, everybody freak out, right? We've all seen the meme, the SpongeBob, everybody run around, panic, it's time to panic. The problem was at that point, we were starting to get little bits of good news, meaning that at that point, we started realizing that it was not 3 to 5% mortality rate. It was probably going to tick down, towards 1%. Maybe even lower. And there were a lot of smart people saying that. They were buried. There was several epidemiologists and things that, people that came out. There was one guy from Stanford who still, is trying to talk. He's like, again, your expert is okay, but this other expert, same credentials, same college, whatever, this guy's lying, right? Like, no, he's looking at the same data. He's just coming to a different conclusion. But if you sort of said, hey, what if this guy's right and not this guy? What started happening is that you were dogpiled. And there was this weird, and it's still going on, this weird societal mania. And I don't mean to be pejorative, but that's what it was. One of the first things I posted again was like, we are not Italy, don't worry everybody. It seems like, here's some bright points of Italy. Again, there weren't a lot of bright points in Italy, but we did see that it only was really affecting the elderly and people with pre-existing conditions. That's not good, but that is a usable data point, right? And that aligned with a little bit that we're getting out of China. That aligned with the data from South Korea. That aligned with other places. And it was, and I think that a lot of those numbers are still holding true to this day, which was, over 80% of the serious cases were elderly. And then you break that down. We were also learning in Italy early on that the ventilators weren't a great idea, but we went, full hog with that for a long time. Again, I understand that too, because we didn't know for sure, right? But here I am posting like, hey, we're not Italy. And this is sort of where it changed for me that I was jumped on. And I was, again, I'm not saying woe is me. I don't really care. But it was odd that I'm sitting here saying like, hey, it's looking like this is not 3%. And people were saying, how dare you, we're freaking out here. How dare you come in here with that hope stuff? Like, well, this, there's a chance that this isn't as bad as we think it is. And it seems like the data is like kind of pointing to, it's not like extinction level stuff. It's bad, but it feels like it's the more actual data we got, the more, I hate to say normal, this thing was turning out to be. It probably won't get down to flu levels, right? Flu is something we know about. It is pretty darn contagious. Getting the flu sucks. I had the flu one time really bad, almost died. Super scary. But what I was saying all along was like, hey, we just need to stop touching our eyeballs, for a little while. Like, wash your hands, hygiene. I even bought masks, dudes, guys. I stocked up in January. I don't know if many of you guys know that, but I bought masks. I bought hand sanitizer. I bought clean wipes. I bought all that stuff before it got sold out because I was paying attention. But the hydroxychloroquine thing was very interesting. All right, that came out in mid-March. It was after we had all locked in, 15 days to stop the spread, which I kind of reluctantly agreed with. I thought it was draconian, but I did think that because we had waited so long, that it was unfortunately necessary, or at least the best bad decision that we had on the table, right? Because we were, again, all put the blame where you want, but we weren't prepared. We're never prepared. None of the governors were prepared. The federal government is never prepared. And my ex-client from Vanda, Mahalis, appeared on, again, Tucker Carlson. Again, say what you want about Tucker Carlson, but he was one of the only people on TV that was very consistent about this. It's the truth. Sorry. It is what it is. And I don't care. I don't care if it's Tucker Carlson. I don't care if it had been Rachel Maddow or Joe Rogan. I don't care. Right? The fact is that he was one of the few that was paying attention and reporting on this, doing his best. Nobody else was. But anyway, he had my ex-client on. And it was because this French doctor had come out with a study. I'm not a master of studies, right? I have worked in a lot of pharma. I do understand what makes sort of an official FDA study. A lot. It takes a long time, costs a lot of money. But the French study, this guy claimed to have treated 100 patients, and all of them had been cured with hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin and some zinc, a zinc kicker, right? And my client was on Tucker, and I posted the clip on my Facebook page. Again, knowing full well what posting a Tucker Carlson clip would get me. But again, this was my client. My client, Mihalis, is a smart guy. He's a good guy. He's a CEO of a pharma company. That doesn't make him an evil person, right? But he's a good guy. His pharma company, Vanda, is actually founded on the idea of taking generic drugs that have good safety profiles and figuring out from sort of a medical standpoint if these drugs that are already approved can be used to treat other illnesses. And that happens a lot in the medical community. Again, I'm not a doctor. None of us are, very few of us are doctors, right? We all pretend like we are. But my point is that Mihalis is a doctor, and it is his specialty understanding existing drugs, understanding existing safety profiles, and applying those things to potentially off-label treatments. There is a huge industry, not even an industry, but it's a huge practice, right, around the world to use drug A for symptom Q, which it is maybe not officially endorsed for, or maybe not officially tested for. It happens all the damn time. And immediately people were like, well, this is not approved for that. Like, well, you have no clue about how medicine works. I'm not saying take it. I'm just putting up a clip of a client who I trust and I know is smart, talking about physiologically how the mechanism of action in this drug theoretically made total sense to him, could help fight this virus, this particular virus, actually. They also did this with some HIV drugs. They took them, they said, look, they actually attack viruses in this way, or some of the zinc inhibitors and stuff. Again, I've read it. Again, it's like, I'm not a doctor, but my point is that this was a hopeful clip. This was a clip saying, look, at this point, in early March, we were watching this New York curve going up. And again, I saw that curve and I was as horrified as anybody. It's like the guy in New Rochelle, which is right near me. That's a big deal. Like, that's not okay. And all of a sudden it comes out that there may be a therapeutic drug that could help. It was literally the first thing that we had that we knew could help, right? And then Trump goes out and expresses some hope for it at his press conference. And I'll concede that the press conferences were, sort of freewheeling, but I'm sorry. I get why a lot of you hate Trump with a fiery passion. But at the same time, I'm looking at this and I'm looking at a president who I don't think wants the country to die. That's insane. Like, if you must really hate him if you think he wants to hurt the country that way. But him expressing hope for a therapeutic, for a pandemic that's sweeping over our country, to me, made all the sense in the world. Good for you. He obviously didn't say go out and take it. He obviously didn't say, okay, it's all over, we found the cure. He didn't say that. He just said, hey, this looks really promising. And then all of a sudden, everybody dogpiled on this drug. And you have to think about this. This drug is generic. It's easy to make. It's been around for 60 years. Hydroxychloroquine is on the top 50 must-have drug list for the UN, for all the aid organizations. This is a must-have frontline drug, and it's because it works. It works on malaria. It works on lupus. It works on other things. It's this weird, like kind of, catch-all viral therapeutic thing that works. It happens to, a lot of people think it works here. And immediately there were accounts of doctors taking this prophylactically, meaning like low dose every day. And many of them were swearing by it. But this weird narrative had built up. And you absolutely know that it was because Trump mentioned it. It was only because Trump mentioned it. How can you let yourself, and I'm sorry, and this is the only part of this program where I'm going to be a little bit judgy, and I don't mean this personally, and I'm not talking about anybody in particular, but the idea that you don't like a person, with every fiber of your being, and you think that this person is evil, and you think that this person is trying to destroy the country. If this person says, hey, this drug is looking like it might help. Now, if you absolutely come down against this drug being used in all situations because of Trump saying it, even when a lot of other smart people are saying it can help, I don't really know how to have a conversation about that, because that's just crazy. Especially, in that poor congresswoman in Michigan, I think, the Democratic congresswoman caught this thing. She was young, and yes, it does affect young people. She caught it, and she started getting really sick, and she actually saw Trump's press conference, and she asked her doctor about it, which is what you're supposed to do if you have a good doctor. Say, hey, doc, I saw this commercial on TV where this guy's carrying around his gallbladder, and, why? Well, but she saw Trump, and she said, hey, this thing is getting really bad. I'm getting really sick. Have you heard about this? And her doctor did some research, probably talked to some colleagues. He probably found out, probably had heard of it. It's a very common drug, guys. And he probably investigated the safety profile, looked at her medical history, and said, you know what, take this, I'll monitor you. Yes, there are some side effects. Yes, of course. Every drug has side effects, people. Anyway, the hydroxychloroquine clip was the first time I really got jumped on. I had people unfriend me. People that I've known for years wrote me scathing notes like, how dare you? How dare you? What are you doing? And there was no specifics. And it was literally like the general theme of it was, we are freaking out right now, and your hopeful posts are not helping. And it really came down to the fact that the society, the majority by far, had decided that locking everybody in was the correct way to go. And anything that chipped away at that narrative, right? It chipped away or could reduce the convincing that needed to happen to make people do that was unhelpful. I understand that on a certain level, but on another level, go fuck yourself. Because the fact was the mortality rate was plunging. What we knew about the virus was increasing. We were seeing hydroxychloroquine and, again, some of these HIV drugs showing hope. We were also learning from, Italy, having to deal with this on the front lines, what they felt like worked and what they felt like didn't work. Like, we were learning stuff. But yet we had these models and these charts out of Imperial College. Thank you, Neil Ferguson, you adulterer, you jerk, with your buggy software and your ridiculous chart. And then you had the university, the Murray model out of Washington. So, and we based our public policy lockdown on these, extravagant worst case scenario charts. I think that we should take worst case scenario charts into account. I think that we should listen to science. I don't hate scientists. But as I've been saying all along, only listening to scientists, only listening to Fauci and Birx and Neil Ferguson about the entirety of public policy is stupid. We don't do that with any other expert. John Bolton is an expert on North Korea. Did the administration listen to him only on North Korea? Did John Bolton said, nuke them? All right, well, you know what? John Bolton's the expert in this room. And I know that the other 9 people here have vastly different opinions and are very smart people and have expertise in the other areas that are ancillary to this and are connected to this. But John Bolton is the North Korean expert. He says push the red nuclear button. So boom, we don't do that. And we don't do that for good reason. But this time we did. This time we gave the controls over to theoretical scientists who, of course, meant well. Nobody's questioning motives here. But we also cannot allow good intentions to substitute for results, really. And the fact is that those models and those charts were wrong. They were vastly wrong. They were bigly wrong. Okay? And we knew that they were wrong early. We knew that they were wrong in March. And yet we continued to jump off the cliff. So fast forward to April 1st. I actually posted on my Facebook page, and many of you have seen this. April 1st, we all go back to work. And this was sort of the one big post. And it's important to note that most of you, again, watching this, if you've gotten this far, I apologize. It's way longer than 5 minutes. But I just wanted to be very clear about where I stand. But I don't know. I used Facebook up until now for, family stuff. I'm not super political online. And to me, this wasn't even political at first. This is like, societal. This is important, right? But very quickly it became political. And again, not because of me. It was just because, when I put up that article about hydroxychloroquine, I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, here is a very hopeful, this is potentially good news. And all of a sudden, because I put that up, and I did apologize. I said, I wouldn't care if this guy was on Tucker Carlson, my ex-client was on Tucker, or whoever. I would put it up. He's my ex-client. I'm not putting it up because it's Tucker. I'm putting it up because it's a guy I know and trust and know is smart, and he is making a good case here. Do I believe him 100%? No. But it's worth considering, and it looks hopeful to me. It seems hopeful to me. How dare you with that hope? We're all trying to scare everybody inside. That hope has no place here. And then the drama started happening. This thing was bad enough, right? We knew that the New York hospitals were starting to get hit. But then was the amplification of the morbidity, the puffing up of the bad news. And I do mean puffing up. There was a lot of bad news. It did not need to be puffed up. But immediately I saw that there was no room in the discussion for good news, for hope, for potential alternative approaches. All of that was stamped out immediately. And the person that brought it up was attacked. The articles were censored. There were articles on, again, that first article, Flatten the Curve, came out on Medium. About 10 days later, there was another article from a group of epidemiologists that were PhDs and all the stuff that you guys throw around, why should we should believe this person and this other person. Again, it's valid. Like, you have knowledge. It's great. But there was another set of people. These were legitimate people. These were not, spirit cookers or, faith healers, or I'm not putting those people down, but you know what I mean? These were exactly the same people that we were being told that we had to listen to, except that they had a slightly different opinion. Medium censored their article. They pulled their article. And so the people tried to be good sports about it, and they went back and they sort of said, all right, let's, they increased their number of citations or whatever, and they resubmitted it, and it was censored again because it wasn't on narrative. It wasn't like they were saying, this is, these are aliens or whatever. And who cares if they were? But the censorship had started. And I am sorry, but I don't like censorship. And neither should you. And it doesn't matter what circumstance it is. It doesn't matter what is happening in the world. It is not an excuse to censor information. That's not allowed. It's not okay. And in this country, it is illegal. And yet it happens. And I understand that Medium is a private company. I understand that Facebook is a private company, et cetera, et cetera. I get it. But as citizens and as consumers of these products, we should not be okay with that. Censorship is terrible. Take that Plandemic documentary. I saw it. I took it with several grains of salt. I'm an adult. I think that everybody should be able to see that stupid thing if they want to. I'm not saying it's all stupid. Also saying it's not true. I don't subscribe to that theory of viruses, and I don't really know about that woman. But my point is to take it off, to censor it, is not only not cool, it's counterproductive. More people saw that stupid thing because you censored it, you dummies. You knew that. Come on. Anyway, all right, so let's go through April 1st. I posted on my Facebook, April 1st, we go back to work. And I got unfriended by several people. People even posted on my timeline, like, I can't believe you terrible, terrible person. I'm no longer friends with you. And I'm not going to sit here and say I don't care. That sucks. I like my friends. I like you guys. But if we can't have an honest conversation, even about tough things, maybe we shouldn't be friends. I don't know. I'm sorry, but I don't really respect that. I don't think that that's worth respecting. If you want to shut somebody down that right, and who's not yelling at you, who's not, calling you names, and you want to shut them down, silence them, shame them for merely bringing up another point of view, I don't know. I mean, you really have to kind of look at the mirror at a certain point. And maybe after this is all over, I don't know. I actually don't have a lot of positive expectations for that, because I think that people tend to dig in and they want to be right. And I actually don't think 6 months from now, when our economy's in smoldering rubble and everybody we know is bankrupt, I don't really predict a lot of mea culpas. But April 1st, we all get back to work. That sort of exploded, right? And I made my case. I said, look, we've shut down for 2 weeks. That is a recession. You can't do that. You can't shut down the economy at all, much less 2 weeks, much less 8 weeks, 10 weeks. And it occurred to me right then that, again, not everybody's an economist or even an armchair economics expert. But I've lived long enough. I've read a lot of good economics books would be the proper term. And I actually think that my experience in marketing, working on and with a huge spectrum of clients in all sorts of industries and businesses, small, large, global, et cetera, I'm privileged maybe to have a real insight into the connections in the economy, the supply chains, how, employee here affects business owner way over there. In normal times, that's a good thing, right? But when they announced the NBA being canceled, and I understood why they did it. And again, please note that a big part of that was lawsuits. And we're not talking about that, but I'll get into that in a second. But immediately when they canceled the NBA, the entirety of social commentary and punditry was around the idea that the NBA is rich, right? The owners can sit this one out. The players can take a break. They all make $1 gazillion. They can hang out. And then that stupid NBA player went and licked the microphone and he caught it and blah, 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 But my thoughts immediately went to the hot dog vendor, the working schlub, the regular mom, the regular dad, teenager, whoever, right? Working that job, carrying those hot dogs around, serving them out, making, probably not a lot above minimum wage. That person was out of work. Not only was that person out of work, the people that make the hot dogs, right? I started thinking about them. People that make the hot dog buns. Boom. Wow. That is a huge client to lose. Nobody was talking about that. The people that make the little paper wrapping that goes under the hot dog bun. Done. Gone. Not okay. Nobody was talking about that. Then they closed Disney. Then they shut off the Major League Baseball. Shut off. Private companies in New York City told everybody to work from home. That I supported. Private companies make sense. We don't want to get anybody sick, but we're still working. We're going to work from home. Then they sent the kids home from school. And that's when I realized that we were in a depression because working families, which if you're not one, you don't get it. I'm sorry. If you don't have at least one parent working at home, mostly two parent working households, especially in the tri-state area here where we sort of got hit the hardest. It is absolutely impossible to work with your kids at home, much less young kids, and much less an expectation that they continue their schooling. And that's when I realized that we were up Schitt's Creek. And again, the fact that nobody seems to really understand the economy. People say, oh, yeah, the economy. We'll just wait it out. It's like, no, you really don't get it. You really don't understand it. And I have seen dozens of people that I know and care about get laid off. Everybody I know who doesn't work for the government or in journalism, or actually maybe some doctors, but again, everybody but the essentials, right, have either gotten laid off or gotten a severe pay cut. Their mortgages aren't cut. Their car payments aren't cut. Their electric bills aren't cut. But their income is cut. Who out there has emergency savings to let them get over that hump? Not many people. And I'm telling you, what's going to happen is bad stuff. And I've been saying this for a long time. I don't mean to be a Chicken Little or an alarmist. And I've tried to put this as nicely as possible. And again, this is the crux of where I'm coming from. And I gave you my long history here just so you can understand my POV on this. Because I went from alarmist to pay attention, research, honestly be skeptical, listen to everything, to the fact that we have done this wrong. We did this wrong. In hindsight, again, everybody's playing the hindsight game. In hindsight, we shouldn't have shut down, right? But I think, we're willing to grant that at that point, it's understandable that we did that, right? But it's not understandable that after that, very shortly after that, when we knew that we had flattened the curve in New York City, that we did not pivot. And the plan B has always been there. We've been talking about it for weeks, which is quarantine the elderly, quarantine the at-risk. And again, I know that quarantine is not really the right word for this, but it's sort of morphed into being, healthy people being shut in as opposed to sick people being shut in. But quarantine the elderly, quarantine the at-risk. And we even said this, if you are frightened, stay at home, keep your kids at home. That's fine. That's fine. But do not force the rest of us to stay at home, because the whole point about flattening the curve was keeping our ICUs clear. That's it. That was always it. That was the agreement, and we did it. And when it was obvious that we flattened the curve, I wrote that too. I said, we flattened the curve, yay us. And the response to that was very interesting. It was like, how dare you? We're terrible. America's terrible. The U.S. is terrible. We did a terrible job. There's, almost, at that point, almost 60,000 people dead. Or actually, it wasn't 60,000 when we flattened the curve. It was probably 40,000. But again, it doesn't mean that the deaths aren't bad. It means that we did what we set out to do, which was to keep our hallways in our hospitals from being littered with dying people. We did not want those scenes from Italy happening here. That was flatten the curve. And we did it. Where are the applause? Again, we didn't kick this thing's butt, but we accomplished what we wanted to accomplish. Because we all knew, again, in March, that we were going to catch this thing. Most people were going to catch this thing. A lot of people were going to die. It was all about mitigating. It was all about tamping down and reducing and containing the reality. But what has happened is flatten the curve has become find a cure or don't come out until it's safe. And we have found out, again, we've known this for months now, that this thing, 98% of the people that catch this thing don't even know they have it, or they think it's a mild cold, right? 2% get really sick, right? And of that 2%, a certain percent go in the hospital. And then the other thing that we've always known is that elderly people really get hit by this thing. It sucks, right? But you know what also sucks? This year's flu affected kids in a big way. Unlike, a lot of flus from recent past, it really hit kids hard this year. Nobody's talking about that. And we are apparently not allowed to compare this to the flu, while at the same time, we're allowed to compare it to Vietnam. This is the kind of shit that I just think is disingenuous. It's not honest. It's not an honest discussion. We can certainly talk about Vietnam, but to say that it's more appropriate to compare these numbers to Vietnam, but not the flu, is stupid. And once again, I really hope that if you believe that, I would kind of look inward and ask yourself why. Like, why do you think that's okay, right? But again, we did flatten the curve, but the fear that we were fed and we fed on had settled in. And we have decided to keep this going. And even now, May 21st, Thursday, states are, starting to open up. And again, I will say bravo, bravo, bravo to Georgia, Florida, Texas. Again, they're not really opening that much. Not enough, I don't think. But, to see the media pounce on these states. And again, I was not super partisan about this sort of stuff until now. But from what I have seen happen from December till now with the media and what they cover and what they don't cover and who they raise up and who they kick down. Again, to any honest observer or anybody who's trying to remain fair or skeptical, it is blatantly obvious to me. And that's why I post, again, I don't really hate Andrew Cuomo, but I posted early on the fact that he was, his nursing home policy was killing elderly people. And I got a lot of kickback from that. Like, hey, how dare you can't come down on Cuomo. We're supposed to come down on Trump, not Cuomo. And it wasn't that I was puffing up Trump. It was just like, hey, we got to be fair here. And my point has always been that, none of these people know what the fuck they're doing. And on one hand, it's understandable. Like this is kind of a crazy thing to deal with. And I'm willing to extend a lot of, empathetic leeway to a lot of this stuff. But when I heard that Sweden was, kind of going raw dog on this thing, I was like, yay, because I personally had read enough, I had heard enough, and in my brain had made the calculation that, I think that Sweden's making the right call here, because from early on I understood that it was a balance. It was a balance between health and the overall health of the society, which is really, really based on the economy. And again, the economy is not Wall Street. And shame on you if you're one of those people that have said, hey, you're not going to kill people over Wall Street. Once again, that's a dishonest argument. And if you're making that argument, you're not being cool. You're not. You're being mad, being emotional, right? It's cool. It's okay to be those things. But don't bring those into an argument, because the economy, and this is what adults know, right? The economy is you and me voluntarily interacting, doing businesses, trading services, exchanging stuff, right? Using money as a proxy for value. That's it, right? And the economy lags, right? And it's not easy to see when you see numbers of people dying versus a question mark about the economy. Yes, it's kind of easy to say, oh my God, we have this now. We know this now. But even the discussion about the future, about the economy, about the damage that this is doing, was pounced on, shamed, ridiculed, and censored. It's absolutely the case, and it's absolutely reprehensible. And a lot of people that I know, like, and love have participated in this. I understand why. It's scary. This whole thing is scary as shit. And nobody wants to die. And I totally understand, especially why a lot of my older friends, I have a lot of friends who are in in the bullseye zone of death on this thing. And I understand why they're scared. But plan B has always been, please, we want you to stay inside. If you are at risk or elderly, stay inside. We will pay for your Netflix. We'll do a GoFundMe. We'll give you takeout. We'll scrub it before it gets there. But the rest of us need to keep this economic engine on in order to support you. We'll take the risk. Yeah, some younger, healthier people will get sick. A very small number of them will die. But again, we've had this data for months now. And the data really hasn't changed, the good data. Again, there's all these stories that come out designed to scare us when it lives in, you can catch it from a tiger, you can, that silly thing where you catch it and you get better, but you can still pass it along. Where was the skepticism on that article? That series of articles was shared everywhere, that you can get sick from this thing, you can recover, and then you can get other people sick. It made really kind of no sense compared to, what we know about viruses in general. But that was propagated, that was spread, that was believed. And that was used as a sort of an argument for a lot of people. And then there are people rooting for Sweden, Georgia, Florida, Texas to fail. I'm not saying anybody want anybody to die, but there is a sense of yearning for, and I told you so here. And if you're one of those people that is secretly yearning for, and I told you so, then again, look in that mirror, man. Take some time. Take a breath. Think about the truth, and think about integrity. These are important words. And that is something I've tried to have from the beginning here. I've tried to be empathetic, kind, thoughtful. I wanted to have some discussions. And even the people that sent me the super shitty notes, accusing me of all sorts of stuff. And again, I hate it. I hate that it makes me very sad that you felt you had to do that. But again, all I have done, and a lot of us have done, and it's more and more each day, and all we've tried to do was make a case for a pivot, for a shift, for a balance, and we have been shut down. And here's my prediction. And again, I hate that I have been weirdly sort of right throughout this whole thing. But here's my prediction. And this is based on personal experience, data, facts, and again, my personal conglomeration of these things. I think we're fucked. I know personally so many people who no longer have income. I know so many people who may be lucky enough to have a job, but have taken a pay cut, a big pay cut. And I know a lot of white collar people. And there is a huge element here of elitism. And I hate that word, and it's been thrown around a lot. It's been thrown around both sides. But I am somebody who works at home. My wife can work from home. I'm a writer. I think about stuff. I do strategy. But I know enough to know that I'm not everybody, right? I've worked other jobs. I know people that work other jobs that can't work from home. And I've worked in restaurants. I know people that own restaurants, work in gyms, massage, places, toenail hair places, whatever. These people are done. And nobody is paying attention to this. And there is a sort of an unspoken assumption that the government is going to pay for them or to help them. And this is something else that bothers me very, very much, because you must have not been paying attention to reality if you actually think that the federal government or even the state governments have anywhere close to the resources to make up for an organic, functioning economy. free market economy, which is what we had. And that's what that is. You can open a nail place, you can sell, you can come in and do your nails if you want, or you don't have to, right? Those things are over and they're done. And in 6 months, we are going to look back at this point and we're going to know that we have made a huge mistake. And again, most of us, there's a lot of us that know this now, and some of us have known this since April. And there's no going back. I'm not a time machine guy, And all I've tried to do is be consistent and be clear, be fair, and be kind and empathetic. But there are just too many people who are permanently toast, out of work, unemployed, destitute. These people are going to be homeless. And, all of the community gumption and, togetherness and all this stuff that, again, it's good stuff, but it's fluff. I know people that have had to go to a food bank already who 6 weeks ago were going out and having nice dinners every once in a while, not super rich people, but they're in big trouble now. And it's going to be you. It's going to be me. Because even though I can work from home, sort of, with my kids here, and you can maybe work from home, and you might be the person wagging your finger at them like, why can't these people just stay inside and work from home? I'm working from home. And with all due respect, you're not truly being empathetic and understanding. You're not really actually putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. But not only that, when these people who we've allowed to get laid off permanently and to become bankrupt and destitute, these are the people, again, they're restaurant workers and they're, all over the place, cruise ship workers, flight attendants, people that work at Disneyland. These are millions and millions of people, 35 million people as of last week. This week will be more. Numbers come out today. I'm sure they've just come out now. It's going to be 40 million people out of work. These are the people that buy your products. These are the people that buy iPhones. These are the people that subscribe to services online. These are the people that buy your food. These are people that lease your car, buy your gas. And again, this is where the tails happen, guys. This is what I've been concerned about, I've been yelling about, I've been pleading about. But you white collar people, honestly, who are able to work from home, even though it's hard, it's super hard with kids here. Again, I'm not complaining. And that might be where some of the confusion is here. I've never been complaining. We are lucky so far. But just because I can still sort of work and my wife can still sort of work, once the market for the things that our clients sell dries up, which it will, we are then out of jobs. And that's what's going to happen in 6 months, guys. The white collar people who are working from home right now, who are the ones that are telling everybody just to stay inside and stop complaining and, shut up with your freedom talk. You selfish MAGA people, why do you want to get us all sick? It's not cool. When those people can't buy your shit, you're out of a job too.